here's Harry Enton on inflation and approval just from this morning. Again, when Fox is putting out these polls, you know you've got a problem. I guess he's only going to now go on, what is it? What's left now?
One Nation. What is it called?
One America News, or I don't know. Here's Harry Emden.
Yeah, John Berman, I would say this is probably the worst 10-day period for the president in the polls his entire second term. The numbers are just atrocious. What are we talking about here in terms of net approval rating? Well, take a look. These are all November polls. The best one of the group puts him at 14 points underwater. That's the Marquette University Law School poll, tied for the worst he's ever had in that poll. Fox, 17 points underwater. Marist, 17 points underwater. The Reuters Ipsos poll, 22 points underwater. And then taking the cake, the AP North poll, 26 points underwater. When your best poll has you still 14 points underwater, you know it's truly bad, and it's as bad as 26 points underwater. We're talking about an average well underwater with the deep blue sea, swimming with the fishes.
And now this is all parties here.
Yeah, keep going.
You think this is bad, Harry?
If you think this is bad, what is driving these horrific numbers for Donald Trump? Well, why don't we take a look at independents, Trump's net approval rating with independents. Back in January, he was close to even. He was at -4 points. Not great, but not terrible. Look at this number, 43 points underwater with independents in the most recent average of these polls. When you are 43 points underwater with independents, you know you're doing terribly. You can't win with this. If this holds for next year's midterm election, wave adios amigos, goodbye, see you later to that House Republican majority and that Senate Republican majority, very much in danger as well. When you take a look at the Pew Research validated voter survey going back to last year, he was basically even among independents with Kamala Harris. Now he is 43 points underwater. Whatever he is doing with independents, it ain't working. They despise him at this point.
That is just a colossal drop.
Oh, my God. It's a 40-point move.
Okay, that's a...
Oh, my gosh. You want the inflation part?
We can do the inflation part, but you have to ask yourself, what is that? Like what is, and I don't know, you know, maybe we'll have a chance to look at some of like the the internals in that poll, but that it would be that this bad right now, I would imagine, is a function in part of what we're seeing with the immigration stuff and how people are experiencing that. And the government shut down.
And healthcare and Epstein.
Yeah.
And
I just want to I want to correct myself just that the meeting is not, I guess it's in December for the Fed, just so people know. But the Fox poll does have a good sense. They asked on 6 different issue sets how people approve or disapprove. And the only issue that they asked about that he has or above 50 approval on is border security. But then when you go to immigration, to your point, he's underwater there now. 53% disapprove to 46%. 55% approve of his foreign policy to 43%. And a lot of that is buoyed by the fact that he was able to, at the very least, get a ceasefire that Israel's repeatedly breaking, but in Gaza for a little while. And then he's over 60% disapproval on the economy, tariffs, and healthcare. And I'd imagine that is when people are starting to also think about their premiums, and you've got 20 million people with the subsidies from the ACA that are looking down the road, that's tied into just the cost of living as well. So it's really, I would imagine, people's wallets that's driving this.
3 or 4 weeks away from those subsidies, the lack of subsidies being locked in, and it seems like the Senate is running out of time to do anything about it, and it doesn't look like they're going to. Trump is telling them not to. And so that's where we're at this point. But let's just look at the inflation numbers, and then we'll continue on. Now, this is the idea that the Senate could be in play is really, in many respects, nuts. But here is the thing that Democrats need to keep in mind. If you want to hold these things for more than 2 years, if you want to hold the House for more than 2 years, or more than 2 years after 2028, you need to have an actual plan. You cannot let's put it this way. The Republicans cannot step on the rake if they don't have the rake. And when Democrats are in power, the Republicans don't have the rake anymore. Democrats, they have to do more than Republicans, because that's the whole point of Democrats. Theoretically, the difference between Democrats and Republicans. And right now, the healthcare stuff is a complete disaster. And 10 years later, 12 years later, we now see the fundamental weakness of the ACA. And that is, it did not control costs in the way that it should have. A. B, those people who are influenced by the ACA, and I'm not talking the patient protection part of the bill, and I'm not talking about the expansion of Medicaid, is a narrow set of people in this country. And so if we're really going to deal with health insurance in this country, you need to present some form of single payer plan.
And on the patient protection part, I just think it's important to note that, like, while the ACA was really important with the pre-existing conditions piece and protecting people from that, we saw how health insurance companies were able to find other ways to deny care in the years that followed. And so it's not comprehensive enough, because they make money by denying you care. That is the incentive. And that's the reason that this middleman needs to be cut out.
All right, let's just look a little bit at the inflation numbers, and then let's
Political groups here. How about what issues may be driving this?
Okay, yeah. So we say that independents are driving Trump's decline overall, but what is pushing independents and the rest of the electorate away from Donald Trump? Away from Donald Trump. John Berman, move out of this screen. Away from Donald Trump. Well, it has everything to do with inflation. It's the cost of living, baby. That is the name of the game. You go back to January, he was 3 points above water. This was the reason why that voters gave him a second term. You look at this. Now, 34 points underwater. My goodness gracious, that is a 37-point move in the wrong direction.
All right. I mean, inflation, one of the things the Fed could do to fight inflation, if that were a concern, is they would raise interest rates right now. Right now, there's been an issue of whether they'll cut them or lower them after the mixed jobs report yesterday. What do the prediction markets say now?
Yeah, okay, so Donald Trump has been pushing. And you know what? The chance that the Fed Reserve in December cuts interest rates now up to 70%, because one of the Fed Reserve members said essentially there was still room for cuts. This will be welcome news for Donald Trump. Whether it ultimately, though, gets at its true problem, which in my opinion is the cost of living, I think a lot of economists would disagree that it would. But
So, I mean, that's the dilemma from the Fed's perspective. I don't necessarily think that a Fed rate cut is going to necessarily spur more inflation. I think, frankly, the immigration stuff that's happening, the tariffs and the uncertainty, creates an environment where I think a lot of corporations either are forced to raise prices or see an opportunity to raise prices and walk away with more profits.
Exactly.
I mean, it's hard for me to imagine that a quarter percent cut is going to, spur that much more economic activity in this environment where everybody's just like, I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah. I mean,
but we'll see.
We'll see. But we saw the lessons that these corporations took from the pandemic, which is that we can
get away with it.
We can get away with whatever we want. Yep. And Trump is giving them every excuse, even if he rescinds these tariffs. What are they going to use as the excuse this time?
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.